Alright, hello everyone, my name is Disc, and in this video we have a 16 Stonevault with my team. And if you're new to my channel, thanks for tuning in. I try to do a video once per week, but the last month or so I've just been busy, so sorry about that. But I also offer private lessons on Metafy, so go check me out over there. And if you like any of these UI elements, please consider joining the channel. They're also open to all of my students, so go check that out. But as we're getting into level 16, 17 keys, you know, up until this point, it is mandatory we hit our rotation right. But in these this higher bracket of keys, it's really all about how well we stagger our defensives. So that could be staggering defensives with your tank, you know, between his spells and our PI. But that also, we have to stagger our group defense. And this is something I've taken upon myself, my responsibility. I kind of look at them as extra spells, honestly, in my back pocket. But I'm talking about Zephyr from our Evoker, AG from the Shaman, and Mass Barrier from the Mage. So it's really about how well we stagger our defensives, group defensive, single target defensives, and that is going to be how you find some ease in these higher level keys. And so with that being said, I've made some changes to my talent build. So here we have our talents, and I wanted to talk about a couple of things here. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Phantom Reach. This is not something I'm playing in every key, but especially in Stonevault, the entire first area, first pole in particular, is very sensitive. It is a major potential area where the key can just wipe altogether. The best thing you can do as the healer is just outrange it all. So Phantom Reach is just going to help with that a little. And now that we have these additional group defensives in party, by the way, these are something as the healer, I think it should be your responsibility to set that stagger, just making sure one is played for every damage event. Brought in some nice UI elements, which I'll show you when we get going, of how I track those. But with those in party and with a more reliable team and defensive coverage, it has opened the door for me to be to change my talents a little, just to increase my output and survivability. And I'm talking about, so I've gotten away from VE, don't need any additional group heals, more survivability with the extra leech. Same with benevolence. I'm just boosting what I have to do a little bit more and relying on the team to do their job. Then let's see, also I've dropped Divine Star. This is something I like. Its output is negligible, and arguably it's something I only use on trash. So getting into these higher keys, we have to be a little more group forward with our build. And this was just a little extra button bloat, to be honest. So I cut it out, just focusing on my main rotation more. Also, I play Prayer of Mending, sue me on that one. I think it's a fun talent. I play it just in between combat. Pretty easy to do, and having a spell that you press out of combat that impacts your combat, I think is nice. All you have to do really is have a 10 stack going into any pull, so let's watch how that goes. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is this one, Enduring Luminescence. It was a spell I used to play, I think back in Shadowlands. I got away from it in Dragonflight, and now I'm back to it. So I've done this for two reasons. The 30% reduced cast time is major. The way I look at that is it's kind of just insurance to hit your rotation consistently. This is one of our longest casts, and when we can make it shorter, it takes a lot of the vulnerability from our rotation out of it, and we just have better coverage for the group. And then the 10% additional duration, what this does for us, as long as you play your Radiance backloaded enough in your Rift window, what this 10% does is it covers your party even for your 6th Torment. So I'm not going to dwell too much on Torments here, but we want to aim for 6 as a baseline. 5 is pretty common and okay most of the time, but know that 8 Torments is out there, and that is something you need to strive for. But what this does is when you backload your Radiance, it provides atonement coverage even for that 6th Torment. So that's pretty big in boosting our output. But all you have to do is make sure you play it late enough in your rotation for the coverage. And then the last thing I'll say about Radiance is going away in the future, but it's still part of the game now, is we have to make sure we Radiance the best person, the person most centralized in your party's cluster. So pay attention to that as we get going. It is really important in here, especially in these higher keys with all of the group damage, we have to have an effective radiance that heals the whole party. So pay attention to that. So I don't want to talk about too much here. This was 550,000 damage per second overall if you wanted a number, but that is with our AUG. As we watch this key, pay attention to the mini games of discipline. These are areas where you can really get some additional output from your tune. So one of the mini games being getting our torments, again aiming for 6. 5 is okay, but we want to strive for 8. Playing our defensives well, so watch for that. That's Fade and Desperate Prayer. And then also maximizing our penance. So we need to use our penance for our dot spread. We never want a penance to fall on a mob without a dot. So pretty easy to have good dot spread as long as we really think about where we're giving our penance. Personally, I use focus targeting to follow my schism. So we might navigate away from our schism to get a better penance. We might navigate away to find an execute for our torments. But then we also want to navigate back to our schism to continue that damage. I do have a macro for my smite to always funnel into my schisms. That's the Void Blast. So I can freely navigate away from my torment spells. Meanwhile, just spamming my smite, knowing it's going into the schism. Food for thought. If you have any questions, ping me about that. And then pay attention to my use. I don't know if I have any great ones in here, but I'm really trying to maximize my racial. So Shadow Meld. This is great for like, let's say for example, meld drink. You can also meld res if you need to, but it's a really great way to protect your health as well. So I have a macro, a weak aura that puts a little icon on my frame anytime I'm targeted with a cast and shadow melds available. So it's really good to start playing that more. I don't necessarily shadow meld off every cast, but for example, if it's a silence, I might shadow meld that off. If I'm not full health, that's a great opportunity to shadow meld. And in here in particular, we have a lot of interruptible casts. This is a great time for you to practice your Psychic Scream. The way it goes is we should be trying to get at least one per pull. It's a 45-second cooldown. Every pull has a most threatening cast, and I have that. I have those white listed into a weak aura that will give you a trumpet sound and glow your fear icon when it's a good time for us to fear. And similar with the Shadow Meld weak aura, the trumpet sound, the bar, and the fear icon glow only queue in if fear is available. So it's a nice little weak aura to help as a reminder to, play that spell. And we have some good examples in here that we'll talk about. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and clip over to the key. All right, here we go. So notice outside of my player frame is the Mass Barrier Zephyr AG. I am taking that upon myself to manage. I think just about any stagger is okay. And in this pull, finding my focus early, we do need to kill the Golem ASAP. But we have a very sensitive pull here, so kind of hold your breath. We open with a Pain Slip on the tank, getting a handful of dots out, and then we have to get into our rotation ASAP. I have my focus target set early, and it is the Golem that is who we want to attack. Focusing heavily on a well-timed PI for the Shaman. I'm just doing everything I can here to hit my rotation clean. There's our second Golem and our second Rift. So also I'm taking on the responsibility of calling if someone gets a double curse, like right there. I'm trying to help our team help me. And then the best thing you can do with Rift, especially when you get in higher keys, is focus heavily on its uptime. So the best thing you can do is as soon as it comes back, just send it. Even if the pull, like right now, is expiring, it's almost over, just send a Rift anyway. It's only a 20-second cooldown. And that was a good first pull. So one other change, let's see if I do it here. I used to vote for, as far as a rotation, Mindbender Death Rift Penance, but something about Mindbender Rift Penance Death, it makes it easier to get all of your torments. So I have kind of switched up my rotation. I use the other one sparingly, but by and large now I send the Rift second. And that was for 6 torments. Like, I think the nice thing about being flexible and maybe playing your death sooner in rotation is if you happen to need to move at that one moment, you can just go ahead and play a death, not drop a torment, and move. Okay, let's see how many spells I get on this next pull. I think I get 2 pets and 2 rifts. That's what we should aim for. So I'm already thinking ahead, and I know on boss, my first rotation is the rift only. So I kind of have the freedom here to send a lot. So let's see, my first pet's out, my first rift is out. Oops. Six torments. Okay, now let's see. My rift is coming up now. Let's see how quickly I play it. And immediately. And that is pretty much what you want to do. And already thinking forward to next pull. So I do play Prayer of Mending, controversial choice. But really not much to it. You just want to have a 10 stack going into any pull, playing it out of combat only. And we have our 10. And so the way the cadence of this fight goes, I pretty much only track the beams, and every other is harder. So every even is the hard one. So on the first one, I send just the rift. I don't need as much healing. So I send just the rift. And watch the Evoker here. His beam slightly missed the pop. So we do recover, but have to prepare. Okay, so now we have the stronger one incoming. This is pet with the rift. So I have a full atonement ramp. Making sure I flash heal very last to proc my defensive. And in Discord, I'm calling for Zephyr. So Zephyr in personals is not a bad idea on the first. And this was only a 3 stack instead of the 4 due to the slight miss of the beam. And then that's pretty much it. We just cycle. So on the next one, we can expect it to be weaker. This is going to be just the rift. I have a full atonement ramp and party. And also making sure I play Fade on all of these. So Fade is our kind of a free damage reduction. So it's only 10%, and you might underestimate that. But when it's paired with your Protective Light, a 20% damage reduction is pretty good. Okay, so this one is going to be stronger. I send the pet and rift out right as the attacks begin. And the call for this one is my barrier. And this is our 4 stack. Rinse and repeat. So the next one's going to be weaker. Looking at the group defensives next to my name. What's next is Mass Barrier. Okay, so this is the weaker one. This is just the rift. IQ and Fade. Work in a Radiance into the rift window. Something you always want to do. And I think I throw a couple Raptures here too, yeah. So I really want to get the CDR from these shields, so I throw a couple here just to cushion. And as the attack is going out, pet and rift. And there's our second PI. Our mass barrier is out. Radiance during the healing window. Getting as many of those void blasts as I can. And 5 torments. Dispelling the tank when I can. Full atonement ramp. Fade is used. And this is the weaker round, just the rift. And so thinking forward to the next 4 stack, I don't have anything to give, so it's going to be coming from, we have Zephyr and AG. I believe I'm calling for both. So we have the full atonement ramp. As the attack is beginning is when you start your rotation. Zephyr AG, put my Radiance during my rift window. Plus we are in execute range. So we are totally covered. I lost a couple torments there, but a win is a win, and a quick drink. So in this attack, we have to know that there's big AoE. We pull the right first, which is a good opportunity to load dots. And then we have to find the despoiler. It's the darker red with my KUI. The timer of his attack is on his nameplate. And then we send our rift and our pet. right before the attack begins. So if you're sending your pet after the attack begins, arguably you're late. You definitely want to get things started before the damage is incoming. Okay, and this is a Radiance into a Rapture. Everyone holding an Atonement makes the Raptures hit harder. That is how our mastery works. So we were pre-coded in the Rapture to cushion, and I had a Rift to give, so this is a half rotation. Just the Rift without the pet. I have a 5 stack of Palm. A good idea here is I stack one as combat's ending, and then I stack the other as I'm walking between. Yep, so there's our 10 stack. And each 10 stack does like 600,000 healing. It's not much. But I only did it in between combat. Okay, so we have to be really careful here. A couple of dots, ramping atonements. Have to find my focus target. The darker red with KUI. Quickly watching for anyone who takes a magic dot here. That's going to be a silence. And with all of our DPS in their major windows and PI out, a quick dispel for the win here. Okay, my first window just ended. I have a Rift to give. There goes the Rift. Radiance during the Rift. And an early collapse, a forced collapse to get the damage. Okay, so looking at available spells, I have Barrier and we have Zephyr. I think I go for my Barrier first. It's a longer cooldown. So waiting for that attack on the nameplate. Yep, then my Barrier preemptively. I pair it with Fade. And then I go into my full rotation as Pet and the Rift. Aiming for at least 6 Torments. Let's watch that counter on the totem frame. Switch my targets to preserve my dots. And we got 6 Torments. So Radiance into Rapture. Again, we're banking on that mastery, prepping for the next attack. Here it comes. I use both my defensives this time. We have less healing output, so Desperate Prayer and Fade. And here's an area, might have been hard to notice, you can replay it if you need to, but in these higher keys where each group just has more health, we're getting to a point now where instead of just 1 pet and 2 rifts, like a 2-to-1 ratio in a pull, we can get 2 and 2. So there's so much health here. Instead of sitting on my Mindbender for the rest of the pull, I send a second. So he has 9 seconds to go, which is not a bad place to be considering we got 2. So in a lower key, it's probably only 1 pet per pull, but in higher keys, you can start squeezing in 2. And that's what you want to do. Okay, it looks like this one I'm covering with the AG. So that was a pet and a rift. Switching targets to preserve my dots. Using focus targeting to fall back. That was a 6 torment round. Ramping atonements for this next attack. Making sure I'm casting flash heal for the damage reduction. Q fade. Send my rift out. And all before the damage began. Switch my targets for my dots. And now we need to drink. This boss does take some mana. So a quick meld drink. I have a macro. Nice way to kind of get a drink off. So on open here, we do want to delay a little bit for the ads to spawn, and that's where we want to line up our heals. 10 stack of palm. So I'm tracking the spawn on his nameplates. Full atonement ramp. And as the damage is going out is when you want to begin your window. So the first one is down. Pet and Rift are active. Radiance during the Rift. And very importantly here, you have to have your Radiance hit all 5 of you. So I put myself in the middle of the party cluster and cast a Radiance on myself so it hit all 5. And then in this area, I went from a Pet and a Rift to a Rapture, making sure I play Flash Heal in between, and refreshed my debuff, so I have a 2-stack. And in these phases, for the most part, I only send the Rift. It is enough to get through these phases, especially since we have shields on the boss. Our Shadow Deaths, remember, it's from our hero talents. They hit much harder on shields. It is a massive heal. So I send the Rift, and I focus on Atonement coverage and playing Shadow or Death on the shield. Okay, so I have a full Atonement ramp. I play the Pet and the Rift. After the first one dies, I collect my first orb. So when it comes to these orbs, you have to get one early and then refresh it. I think what happens here, the Shaman nabs mine. I play my Desperate Prayer. I'm just flash healing others, to be honest. Banking on, yeah, Shaman nab mine there. But we're in luck because this is a PI Ascendance round. He is covered with spell warding, and it didn't matter that I dropped my stack. We're through. Dot is on boss. Full Atonement ramp. As the first one dies, Fade is active. Pet and Rift. Collect my first orb early. Really important, my Radiance hits the best person. That time I picked myself again. It hit all 5 of us. Man, Wix, it keeps stealing the orange. Okay, that was a 7 Torment window. Pretty good. And another Rapture round. Making sure I Q Flash Heal. This time I have my second orb. And this one, I believe I remember, we get a little spooked. So I think I play some additional spells here. So notice my Rift window is ending now. So I play a barrier. I faded and also paints up myself just to make sure we got through. It was an overplay of spells. It wasn't needed. But we can recover that. That is not a problem. We lived. Okay, we have to play one more round of these. We just are going to have to. So like before, rinse and repeat. As the ads are spawning, that's when I queue my spells. So Pet and Rift are out. Making sure I Radiance the best person. All 5 of us are hit. And we're getting double executes because of sub 20. And if you watch closely here, we're about to have a death on the Shaman. So we have a 0 sack, 0 paints up, literally until the moment he dies. So we did talk about it. I think in hindsight, looking at available spells, the best thing he could have done there is just cool it on the orbs since we didn't have externals. But we do have PI and Ascendant, and that is all we need. But that was, although he did lose a lot of his power from his trinket, that was Ascendance and PI, and that is all we needed to get through. Okay, we're moving on. I play my Prayer of Mending before the cart. I need mana. Don't got much mana. Finding my focus early here. I believe I turn off nameplates. Yeah. Catch my focus, set my focus, and we're set. So I found the Darkest Red. Looks like here I open with 3 dots as an opener. Probably all we need, to be honest. Penance will do the rest. I Dispel, and then my rotation. So this was a Pet Death Rift Penance. Sometimes you can't do that if you have to move. So notice here how Blinkerson, our mage, got the single target. We saw it coming with the targeted cast Weakar. He highlighted white, and then he turned red when it landed. So that was a grip of life because we about pulled that backpack. But thankfully I saw it. Thankfully I had grip and gripped our Evoker out of the way. But what I was saying about Blink is he got it twice in a row. So what that means, reading between the lines, is he's going to have less defensives. So knowing that, it is kind of your job as the healer to give him some extra favor. And some of the best single target healing we can do is Rapture plus Wheel and Woe. And that's what we did there. Okay, I found my focus, the darker red. Opening with a couple of dots, and watch our Shaman. Ouch, pulled aggro. So, anyway, the best you can do here is just hit your rotation solid. You can expect spiky damage with less than 5 people. I also have PI to give. I think I give it to him when he comes back, if I remember right. Okay, and here comes my second Rift. Let's see how quickly I play it. Radiance straight into Rift. So I pre-Radiance there. We didn't really need group coverage, but I was buying myself extra bolts. Those extra bolts are everything. And here's our PI. So it's a little bit weird playing it this late in a pull, but you have to always think ahead. And although I think the PI gets full value here, technically, we play it here because we have one more before boss. We can't really get behind. Okay, and then this is a skip play. Mind Soothe for the win. 566,000 per second. Pretty good. Refresh my Soothe. I fade just for comfort. And these pulls are good for extra executes. Thanks. Okay, so I set my focus. Pet is out. I grab execute on those weaker guys. So in that type of rotation, I go pet, death, death, then the Rift penance. I don't want to sacrifice the CDR in my Rift window for penance's sake. Let's see how many torments I get here. 6 torments. Would have rather 7, but that's okay. So here goes our second Rift, playing it as soon as it came available. Always want to play a Radiance anytime the Rift is out. And these are good fear opportunities. Noticing my fear icon is glowing. And a trumpet sound. There it was. So there is a lot of interruptibles in this dungeon. This is a great place to start practicing playing your psychic screen. And if you use that weak R that I made, it glows your fear icon when there's a chance for you. I pretty much have it loaded in about 1 spell per pull, picking the most threatening one. And fear is a 45-second cooldown, which you get about once per pull. So, okay, I think I tried for the executes there and missed them. Let's see how many torments I get. Oh, here's another execute. Oh yeah, I got it. Okay, so we're at 6 torments and 7. Okay, good. So 6 is a baseline, 7 is pretty easy to do with torments, and 8 is when you get hella executes. I think I got one of those earlier. Another Rift is out. Making sure I keep my dots up with penance. Let's see, I should be ramping a Palm. There it is. So Palm, I think, is going to be better than Holy Nova. Holy Nova isn't something you press ever. Palm is at least something you can press out of combat. If you're going to experiment with it, I would caution you from ever playing it in combat. It's only an out of combat thing. Okay, we got our buff. So we have one more pull. This is our second PI I was telling you about. So watch the Shaman's damage here. It's pretty impressive. Finding a darker red mob, that is good for focus. Also remembering these pulls have a lot of fear opportunities, so trying to set myself up for one. It's a trumpet sound, a glow on the fear icon, and a little aqua bar that you'll see pop up. Okay, so PI's out. Doing everything I can here just to hit at least a 6 torment rotation. Let's see how many I get. Switch targets to preserve my dots, and I got 7. So now that my window's over, I have less to give as far as healing. It's a good time to interrupt. So let's see if I play my fear. There it is. And that weak R is pretty nice. It'll only glow and make that trumpet sound if my fear is available. So it's kind of a nice little reminder to play your fear. Okay, and on this boss, pretty tricky. Similar to boss 1, the first round is weaker, second is stronger. So every even hits harder. And on the open here, we have enough time for one full rotation. So pet and rift. And notice how much I'm favoring things like smite and penance. 8 torment window. And the name of the game here is we have to have our full rotation back in time for this first exhaust events. And the first one was not a good example, so watch for the second. But the idea is we want to delay our rotation here so that the collapse happens after the crescendo. So watch this one. And also we have to stagger our group-wide defensives here. I believe the first call is my barrier. And watch the collapse here. So collapse, then crescendo. Not good. And we're all kind of with our pants down. So the next one, the next two, I think are better. So watch those for examples. We also have tank busters in here. Noticing the targeted cast weak R is highlighting our tank white. And then when it comes to these dots in group, we don't have our pet yet, but we do have the rift and it covers it fully. So you just want to kind of get it out before the damage begins. That is my best advice. Okay, and on this one, this is the one that hits harder. This is the even attack. So I'm pre-ramping heals, pre-ramping atonements. I pre-feather. Thankfully we have spatial paradox right there. And this rotation is a lot better. So I pet death rift penance just to delay the rift. We Q in Zephyr. The crescendo happens, then the collapse happens, and we are all full health. My shield on the tank there for his tank buster. And this is just a rift, and it covers the stop fully. I think we get one more of these. Let's see how it goes. And then another word of advice is we really need our feather here to reposition to the vents. You don't want to press that in your healing window, so just press it before, like a precast. Or you could even set it out like on the ground for you if you want. Okay, in this one, we can really easily delay the rift because we have 2 deaths in front. So pet, death, death, rift, penance. And for this one, the call was mass barrier. And notice how my collapse happens after the crescendo, and we are all full health. And boom. So that boss is, I think, pretty fun, but it's also pretty hard. The having an Evoker makes a big difference there with spatial paradox or rescues to help kind of get you into place. It's the hardest part about it for a healer, or a priest at least, is we can't heal too well while moving. We really have to rely on those void blasts. So if we can get spatial paradox, maybe call for spatial paradox, or even get a rescue, it really helps us hit our void blast, which is the bulk of the healing for that fire dot. Okay, and then the play here is I'm going to shadow meld, and we have a mistake. So watch. So the play is I circle back around, I let them do their charge, and it puts them, opposite of the room. I feather and penance myself. That is for the blazing, what's it called? I get extra speed. And then I circle back around them, and right here I meld. Meld. But the problem was, we played this back, I was still carrying Ebon Might, which gave aggro to our Evoker. So here they come. We have 2 extra mobs in this pull. We all are kind of freaking out, but the best thing you can do is just play accurately and not have deaths, not have a wipe. So one thing, and then here comes our second earth attack. This one is going to hit harder, so I pre-ramp raptures and my personals, Desperate Prayer and Fade. And then kind of reading between the lines here, so there are so many things going on. Especially being we had an accidental pull. If you are kind of reading between the lines on it with my big wigs, a huge word of wisdom here is customizing your list to have it not beep at you for everything. In these pulls, I only have it beep for the frontals. So being that that's the only thing that can kill you, that's the only thing I want to hear. So it's kind of a system where if I hear a beep, I know there's a frontal. And that is the only way we got through this. It was lost time, but having no deaths, no wipes, is the only reason we completed this key. And then in these next bowls, we have totems. I have them stand out as a different color with my KUI nameplates. You don't, as the healer, don't really have to hit them, but if you have like a Shadow or Death up or a Penance or something like that, I think it's okay to do that, but I wouldn't cast a Void Blast on them, but if you have like a Death or something, I would do that. I think I help out on at least one or two of these. 6 torments. Second rift out. And I missed the collapse. Rip, but that is okay. Yeah, if you're ever going to send a late rift, you have to practice collapsing it. That macro is /cancel aura. Entropic rift. And here's our PI. And watching the timer of that spell on his nameplate, I want to time my spells there somewhat. I don't think it's a bad idea just to get them out ahead of time. Also keeping those guys soothed just for some extra security. That was only a 5 torment window. I got a little too distracted. Okay, so we have a Radiance into Rapture. Again, we're getting the Mastery, buffing our shields, and it looks like we have crits pretty much on everyone in group. And I send a Rift to Accompany. And if you want to practice, I think I get one on this next pull, but notice my target's cast bar is right above my cast bar. The idea there is that I'm trying to help myself precast. And if you play your cards right there after the attack hits you, there's a split second before you're punted, and you want to precast when you can your Radiance on top of that. Let's see if I get one here. Okay, Pet, Rift, Penance, Death. So that one landed before. The precast isn't always necessary, and in that case, it didn't matter if the actual green of the Radiance hit, because I was in my window and all my other spells are AoE healing too. So okay, let's see if I get one here. Okay, so this is just the half rotation. Pet is done for this pull, sending out our second rift. There. And then that one was very important, because it was a weaker window, plus there were no atonements in party. So a precast there made a difference. Okay, and then in this boss, it is not too threatening, but you have to stay on your toes. So the most threatening part of it is when you have overlapping mechanics. So if you're holding the dot when the blue circles go out. So having an Evoker here is really nice. We can clear 2 of those at once. And then watching for bad overlaps. And then you really just want to send your spells as much as you can to kill this guy. So it's pretty easily a 2-to-1 ratio here, so twice as many rifts as Pet. And that is my just rift window. Now the Pet is back. A little bit late, but pants up the Shaman there just to make sure he lived. There goes my full rotation. 2 penance into the rift. 5 torments. And coding for Rapture on this one. So the Entropic Reckoning is the bar timer I'm tracking. It is nice to the best of your ability, overlap your Pet and Rift or Rapture or Barrier on top of the Entropic Reckoning. So that's what we're doing here. And notice our Shaman is still holding the dot. He has sack, but I was giving him a little bit of extra healing. That is a single target barrier. It is more of a niche play, but the right play a lot of times. There's our Spatial Paradox. Love it. Again, giving the Shaman a little bit of extra heals. So you really, at least at this level, you have to pay close attention to anyone who's holding the dot. So pieces of your team are going to be left with it, and you have to give them extra 11. Okay, so here comes the pet and rift. We have PI active, full atonement ramp and party. Another double clear with rescue. Radiance before the bomb, and we are all covered. Another, I don't think we get an example here, but another thing you can take upon your responsibility. This is why I vote for party nameplates. I know some people will lose their mind if you mention party nameplates to them, but I think there's utility for them as a healer, as a priest. If you see anyone in the frontal, the cone frontal, you can grip them out. No examples here, but it's a nice save when you can. Seven torments. Need set myself because I can. Guy's almost dead. Early collapse on the rift. And boom. So this was a key we kind of had to work for. I only got 1 point because I timed it before, but I'm over 3,400. Pretty proud of it. I'm in title range, doing my best to hold on for the season. It makes a big difference when you're in a group. These higher level keys just demand not only so much accuracy with yourself, but coordination with one another. So you really have to have a group, and it's from my point of view, it's really all about staggering those group-wide defensives. So if you have a group that really doesn't have any of those, like if you have a rogue, hunter, they just don't bring those spells, and in these keys it just makes such a difference. But there's a quick display of the damage if you wanted to see that. Damage and healing, atonement for the win, entropic rift and pet for the win. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, and until next time, Disc.